And welcome to a special edition of Coffee with Waymark, day one after Liberation Day. These are the days that I call the big font days. And why do I call them big font days? Because this is pretty much what you'll see with um, any website that you hit this today, whether it's a news website or a financial website, you'll see in big bold letters how terrible the market is and all of that. So usually, I've been doing this for well over 20 years now, which is kind of scary. And these days come, and I have very logical conversations with people more often than not, everyone, kind of understands the market goes up, the market goes down, but they still feel very uncomfortable. So that's usually where I then go into my market volatility folder, which I have here, which has all of the things that I have accumulated since 2014. Every time the market has had a bump in the road, and I pull out the ones that I think are the most important. So I'm going to go through the latest and greatest market volatility deck that I have that came from LPL. And I think there's some really good slides in here that hopefully will help you to understand what's going on, why market volatility happens, and all that. This specific one, I'll talk about in a moment why the tariffs are causing such a dramatic response from the market. But let's just go through a little bit of a history lesson on the market and how volatility plays a role in it. So let's start here. Obviously, everyone knows that stocks have risen over the long term, even when there have been some really crazy things. If you're looking at it over different time blocks since 1957, for instance, this chart is pretty much saying that if you look at any 1 year period, there's a 74% chance that the S&P 500 rose. If you look at it over a 3 year period, 85%, 5 year period, pretty close, 84%, 10 year, 92, and 15 year. If you're looking at any 15 year time frame, since 1957, 100% of the time the market has been positive. When I say the market, the S&P 500. This is a chart that I've seen in many, many different iterations, but ultimately it says the same thing, that timing the market, getting into and out of the market at the wrong time is killer for your portfolio. And I always explain to people that you have to be right twice. So if you call me and you say, I've had enough, the market has dropped too much, I'm nervous about what's going to happen, I want to sell. I'll say to you, well, okay, great. We'll sell today. When are we getting back in? And everyone kind of gets a little bit perplexed by that question. They're expecting that I'm just going to say, I'm going to push back and say, no, you shouldn't, because the market has always recovered and everything's always been great. But if I do kind of call your bluff and I say, okay, great, we'll sell today, but when are we getting back in? That usually kind of causes people to take a step back, because you have to be right twice. So let's say the market's coming down. Let's use 2008, which everyone kind of remembers. So someone will always say to me, in 2008, I had this neighbor, I had my brother-in-law, I had this person that I knew who got out of the market right before it tanked. I said, great, good for them. When did they get back in? Oh, I don't know that answer. Well, then you don't know the full story. Because ultimately, if you get into the market or you get out of the market when it goes down, great. And if the market keeps going down, you've won. But you have to get back into the market down here or somewhere between here and there. Otherwise, you're going to lose money. And what most people do is they wait, and they get back into the market when the market's higher than what they sold at. They lost money in that regard. And that's what this chart is pretty much saying, is that if you miss, since 1990, if you get out of the market and then miss the 5 best days, you lose 4%. You miss the 10 10 best days, you lose 12%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's hugely costly to do this and do this wrong, and most people do because you have to be right twice. So we all know about this. This is an important chart here because what this is pretty much saying is that the market, as you can see down here, the market tends to go up. So this is, if we're looking at the positives, about 75% of the time, as we saw in the chart before, the market goes up. But in those years where the market goes down and where the market goes down sharply, yeah, it has the potential of going down 25% or more, like 2008 and 1974. However, guess what? Where was 2009 and where was 1975? A year later. Well, guess what? They're over in the green. So 2009, you can find right. I just looked at this, so I'm embarrassed that I don't see it right off the top. Oh, it's right here. So it was probably up 15%, and then 1975 was up 25% or more. So again, when the market goes down, typically the market swings back pretty quickly. Again, if we look at all of these, 2008, 1974, and we look at 2009, 1975, 2023, which was a year after 2022, 2003, a year after 2002, and 1974, the only time when the market was down in these 5 times was 1974. So 1973, the year later, 1974, really, really bad. But the rest of them were all in the green section. So when the market bounces back, it bounces back pretty sharply. Market pullbacks are common. This is how many times a year the market has pulled back 5 to 10%. And then if we look at 10 to 20%, we see that that's not that uncommon either, about an average of 1 per year. And then volatility, I'd get into that in a little bit, but stocks have grown. And then, this is another chart pretty much saying what I said earlier, which is when the market drops 10 to 20%, within 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months, the market is typically positive, and positive by a pretty significant amount, which is what I showed you in the last one. So let me shift gears and talk a little bit about this particular market that we're engaged in now and why it seems like, especially, and I've shown this, well, I have a chart that I could show you that shows that no big surprise when there's a Republican as the president, Republicans tend to view the economy as very good. And when a Democrats and vice versa, Democrats don't look at it as positively, and vice versa. When Democrats look at the economy as really good, and the Republicans don't look at it as that good. So what I found with this specific one, with this Trump presidency, and again, I joked about the Liberation Day, but that's what Trump named it. What's happening and why people are getting so anxious. This is the psychological part and the behavioral finance part of the conversation. I think everyone knows that stuff that I just showed you a moment ago. Everyone knows that long term the market does fine, and there are bumps in the road and whatnot. But for whatever reason, this particular presidency has caused people to be much more reactive. And I've had clients that have historically weathered the ups and downs pretty well, but this particular drop that we've seen in 2025 has really, really unnerved them. And I think what's going on, so I'm going to put my Psychology 101 hat on, is that constantly we're always doing this. We're assuming that there's a lot of possible things that could happen, but not many probable things that happen. So there could be a meteor that falls on us. There could be, whatever, some kind of China could invade, Russia could invade, whatever. Those are all possible things, but we kind of discount them because it's possible, but very, very unlikely. And then there's the probable things. Well, the stock market might go down. Yeah, probably that would happen. We may get involved in a car accident. Probably at some point in our life, we'll have that happen. So we've kind of just mentally kind of accepted what the probable things are and almost discounted the possible. I think what's happening, and again, this is me putting my psychology 101 hat on, is that I think that especially among the Democrats and the more liberal leaning clients, they've thought of Trump as a little bit of a boogeyman and dreamed up a lot of things that he could put in place that would be very, very bad. And what's actually happened is some of those things that you had dreamed as possible actually have come to fruition. And so now I think what's actually happening is people are saying, well, if some of those possible things are now the probable things, what other possible things could be going on that tomorrow will actually happen? And I think that's what's getting some of my clients who have been pretty even keeled, but are really starting to freak out about things. And so what this chart is showing, and the key thing is, I've heard this from a number of my more liberal clients where they say, well, this time is different. We have, and insert all the negative things about Trump, which I won't repeat here because I'm trying to stay above the politics here. But the key point that they're saying is that we've never seen this before. This is unprecedented. So unprecedented. I've heard that so many times. And the reason why I show this chart here is that every single one of these events was always thought of as a possible thing, but not a probable thing. And it caused big reactions in the stock market. But we've gotten past every single one of them. We've dealt with it. And I think one of the key things when it comes to investing is that the markets are not static. They're dynamic. And so, for instance, last night was Liberation Day for America, and we announced a lot of tariffs. And the market right now is responding very negatively to that. Tomorrow, the next day, in a week, the world will adjust to that. Very dynamic. Some of the things might be good, some of those things might be bad, but at least historically speaking, the market and the economies of the world have always pivoted and adjusted to whatever has happened, like all these things that are up on the screen right now, and we've gotten through them. So again, long story short, I can't promise anything. I don't know if this is going to be a temporary thing, and by the end of the year, we'll be looking back at this as just a speed bump, kind of like the way that, remember, just a few years ago, we had the Silicon Bank failure, and a bunch of regional banks were having a lot of trouble. And right around this time, right around March, April timeframe, people are really nervous that these regional banks would expose some kind of cancer in the banking system. The market had a really strong reaction to that. But if I ask the majority of you, remember when we had that? You couldn't recall that. But at the time, I got a lot of phone calls and there was a lot of nervousness about that because, again, multiple banks failing could lead to another 2008. It ultimately didn't happen. The market had 2 straight years of 20% plus rates of return in 2023, 2024. After all that happened, but again, right now a lot of us can't even remember that. I don't know if that will happen. Obviously anything can happen with the markets, but this does feel like, yes, it might be unprecedented, but at the same time, it could be, as Mark Twain put it, just history. While it doesn't repeat itself, it certainly rhymes. And that's kind of what I feel like right now, is that can't promise anything, again, can't promise what's going to happen, but it does feel like just another normal big font day. That's all I got for you. I hope this is a good little pep talk for you, just to give you a little bit of context and hear something different than what the cable news networks are talking about with their big fonts and all the doom and gloom that they're probably peddling today and probably for the next several days. Thanks for listening, and remember to be well and do good.